To be honest, I never thought my college life would veer in this direction. The kind that no textbook teaches, no student advisor mentions. Loving someone I know full well is the wrong choice, but I can't let go. And that person is Dylan. In the fall of my sophomore year, golden leaves blanketed the path leading into campus, and the wind carried the scent of coffee from the small cafe in the student union over my shoulder. This college town was always buzzing in that quintessential American way. The roar of Saturday night football games, laughter on the campus green, and hurried footsteps before 8 a.m. lectures. I used to think I had everything under control: GPA, gym schedule, summer internship plans. Until Dylan walked into the social psychology discussion section and sat down in the chair next to me as if it were the most natural thing. He arrived late, his breath still minty from gum, gray hoodie loosely pulled up, brown hair tousled in that I didn't try but still look good way. When Dylan pulled out the chair, our eyes met. He smiled, the kind of smile that makes you lose focus on all your Google Docs notes. I looked down at my notebook, telling myself, "Don't bother, Aaron. He's trouble." My intuition has never been wrong. It's just me who always ignores it. That day's discussion was about irrational choices. Ironic. When it was my turn to speak, my voice sounded calm, but my heart pounded like a drum at homecoming. Dylan leaned back in his chair, listening as I talked about decisions we know are wrong but make anyway, because emotions always outrun reason. He smiled faintly, tapping his pen lightly on the desk. "Interesting," Dylan whispered, as if just for me. I pretended not to notice, but those words stuck in my head for the rest of the session. After class, I saw Dylan outside the library, leaning against the railing, afternoon sunlight spilling over his shoulder. "Aaron, right? You spoke well," Dylan said casually, as if we'd known each other forever. Hearing my name in his voice made my chest open up, warm and dangerous. We walked across the quad, talking about trivial things. The indie music he liked, the winter roads in his home state, and my biggest fear, failure. Dylan laughed, tossing a leaf into the air. "Failure's fine, as long as you don't run from what you really want." I turned to look at him. I didn't know what what he really wants was, but I started to fear it might be me. In the days that followed, Dylan appeared everywhere I went. The corner table on the third floor of the library, the taco food truck in front of the humanities building, the dorm steps where yellow lights cast down on late nights. We talked until the dorm Wi-Fi reset at 2 a.m. Dylan shared about his not-so-harmonious family, about always feeling like he was outside the perfect picture of others. I talked about having to play the role of stable, neat, reliable, the no-worries son, and the exhaustion of always having to be strong. One evening, rain pattered on the awning of the science building. We took shelter, shoulders touching. Dylan was silent for a long time before whispering, "Aaron, I'm not a good person." He smiled crookedly. "I do everything on emotion, hurt people without meaning to, and sometimes I disappear." I heard every word. It was a warning. It was exactly why I should back off. But I couldn't. I looked straight into his eyes, seeing a gentle, chaotic storm. "I don't need you to be perfect," I replied, my voice low enough for just us. "I just need you to be real." That sentence might have been a round-trip ticket to heartbreak, but I signed it myself. The first time Dylan held my hand was as we crossed the street lit with lights from the student bar. His hand was warm, strong, yet trembling slightly. No soundtrack, no dramatic declaration. Just two American guys in a college town that didn't know their secret. I knew well, society out there still had unpredictable stares. But in that moment, I only felt my heartbeat syncing with his. I also knew early on that Dylan had dark corners. Slow replies to messages, evenings vanishing without explanation, distant eyes when I talked about the future. But every time he smiled, every time he said, "Aaron, I'm here," in his sleep-deprived rasp, all the warnings in my head went silent. I chose Dylan, not because he was the right choice, but because he was the only one my heart would accept. That night, returning to the dorm, the city was asleep, the distant train rumbling over the tracks south of campus. I stared at the ceiling and realized my story had begun. Not obedient, not safe, but real enough to scare you. I told myself a line, like titling a diary no one reads but me. He's the wrong choice, but the only one for me. I didn't know how it would end. I just knew from that moment I'd stepped in completely with no way back. If romantic stories were a class, I'd officially skipped all the required credits on safety. The weeks that followed flowed like a song with a chorus that made me want to replay it, yet fear the heartbreak part. Dylan wasn't like anyone I'd met at school. He entered my life without permission, like a song playing from a cafe speaker. Casually heard at first, then impossible to stop. Evenings on campus became long, aimless walks. Past the football field after games, by the bronze statue students teased with knitted scarves, stopping at the wooden bench behind the library where yellow lights pooled into soft glows. We talked about things we'd never say in class. Dylan said he'd tried loving the right person, by everyone's standards. Stable, clear, no surprises. But his heart never settled there. I'm like someone who loves sliding down slopes, Dylan joked, twisting off a water bottle cap. No, it's slippery, but dive anyway. I laughed, but inside, my heart tightened. I realized I might be his next slope. One Friday night, we went to a party at an off-campus house students rented together. String lights hung on the porch, the smell of cold pizza and barbecue sauce mixed in the air, pop music thumping through the walls. Dylan pulled me to the backyard, away from the noisy crowd. The autumn chill made our breaths misty. Suddenly, he reached up to adjust my collar. A small, simple gesture that sent my heart racing. You're too tense, Dylan whispered. Relax, Aaron. No one's examining us under a microscope here. I wanted to believe that. Still, the fragility clung to me. Afraid of being seen, afraid of being hidden. I learned that loving another guy in an American college was like that. Between freedom and caution, between bravery and the habit of self-protection. We sat on the wooden steps. Dylan leaned his head on my shoulder for a moment, then sat up straight as if afraid he'd gone too far. Aaron, I can't promise anything, he said. Eyes not on me but on the darkness between the trees. I'm not good at keeping promises, and I'm still learning how to stay. I swallowed the sting in my chest. I should have stepped back right there. But instead, I took Dylan's hand. No need to promise, I whispered. Just today. That today stretched into many days. We studied in empty classrooms, ate burritos at midnight, argued about favorite movies. I liked ones with neat endings. Dylan preferred open-ended stories. Because life is like that, he said, rarely with the end. I went quiet, wondering if he was hinting at us. But then, Dylan's other side emerged. Repeated sorry, busy tonight messages. Days vanishing from class and group project chats. When we'd meet again, Dylan smiled faintly, offering half-hearted explanations. Tired, overwhelmed, needed space. I nodded like I understood, but inside were questions I didn't dare ask. I feared if I touched something too deep, he'd pull his hand away from mine. One Sunday afternoon, we sat in my dorm room, window overlooking the sun-drenched parking lot. Dylan sat on the floor, back against the bed, fiddling with my keychain. I sat in the chair, looking down at his tousled brown hair, when a question flooded my heart. Dylan, to you, what am I? The room went silent. The ceiling fan whirred steadily. Faint laughter echoed from the hallway. Dylan looked up. His eyes made me want to retract the question, but it was too late. You're the one who makes me feel real, he said slowly. But I'm afraid of hurting you. And I hate myself for knowing that and still getting close. I smiled, but it came with a salty taste on my tongue. You've already gotten close, I replied. And I'm not running. We were silent, but it wasn't emptiness. It was a room full of unsaid things. I sat down beside Dylan. The distance vanished. No declarations, just two hands finding each other like a natural reflex. In that moment, I understood that sometimes the wrong choice isn't wrong because it's bad, but because it demands you place your heart where there's no insurance. The sky darkened. Evening shadows fell into the room, softening everything into outlines. Dylan rested his forehead on my shoulder, breathing out softly. I closed my eyes, feeling a strange peace weave through the worries. I knew we couldn't define this relationship. I knew I was gambling. But isn't college the time to risk yourself to know who you are? That night, as Dylan left, he stood at my door, hand on the knob like he didn't want to let go. "Aaron," Dylan said, his voice low and unusually serious. "If one day I leave, don't think you're not good enough." I stood frozen. "What if I stay?" I asked. Dylan looked at me, his eyes bright and sad. "That would be the bravest thing I've ever done." The door closed between us and 1,000 unsaid words. I stood in the silent room, heart pounding. I saw it clearly. We were walking a tightrope, beautiful high with no safety net. But I kept walking, because at the other end was Dylan. I lay on the bed, my phone screen lighting up with a short message. "Good night, Aaron." I stared at those words for a long time. Maybe love is like that, not always certain, but each goodnight is enough to choose to stay one more day. And I, foolish or brave or maybe both, chose that. Winter arrived with foggy mornings and the scrape of snowplows across the dorm parking lot. The college town donned a gray, cold coat, and I discovered that feelings have seasons too. They bloom, shrink, and test your endurance like northern winds whipping through red brick buildings. Dylan and I grew closer in a way that didn't need naming. We had a habit of sitting in the small cafe next to the English department, where the windows always fogged from the non-stop espresso machine. Dylan liked his Americano black and iced, while I needed milk and sugar like a certified weakling. "You always try to make things less bitter," Dylan teased, stirring his cup. I raised an eyebrow, firing back. "And you like keeping the original taste, even if it makes people wince." He laughed, the smile hitting the softest spot in my heart. But gradually, small cracks appeared. One evening near finals, we planned to study at the library. I waited on the 3rd floor, at our usual corner table overlooking bare trees. The clock ticked past hours. My messages showed, "Sent," with no reply. When the library was about to close, Dylan finally showed. Eyes ringed with dark circles, a faint whiff of alcohol on his thick coat. "Sorry," he said, voice hoarse. "I ended up at a friend's, and things got out of hand." I wanted to be angry, to say I'd waited, I'd worried, that I wasn't as important as whatever fun he had. But seeing Dylan slump into the chair, shoulders sagging like he carried the world, my anger melted into something else. Concern, then tenderness. I just pushed a water bottle and a small pack of snacks from the vending machine toward him. "Eat," I said. "Then tell me." Dylan shook his head. "Nothing worth telling. I'm just not good at being stable like you want." Those words were like a dull knife, not severing, but leaving a long wound. "I've never said you have to be like me," I replied, gentler than I thought. "I just want you not to disappear from your own life." A long silence bridged us. Dylan pressed his hands against the cold cup like he wanted to sober up. Then he looked up, dropping a line that shattered my heart, yet kept me from leaving. "Aaron, I don't know how to love without hurting someone." I stared at him for a long time. "Then learn," I whispered. "If you want to. I'm not the hero in a coming-of-age movie. I'm just a guy betting his heart on someone who might not stay." But in those blizzard days, we had moments warm enough to melt all fears. Like the evening the whole campus shut down for heavy snow, we got stuck in my room, eating instant noodles, watching old films. Dylan's phone buzzed nonstop with notifications, but he flipped it face down, turning to me. "Tonight, just us." That was enough to make me believe a little further. Loving Dylan was like reading a book missing chapters. You get hooked enough not to quit, even knowing you might never fully grasp the plot. He had ways of touching my knee under the table when we laughed at an old joke, or placing his hand on my back crossing slippery streets. Those small gestures, to me, were an unsigned commitment always present. Then one day, the signs became clearer. That evening, I went to Dylan's groupmate's apartment for review. The door was unlocked. I knocked lightly and stepped in. The living room had only dim yellow light and tiny lo-fi music. Dylan stood by the window on the phone. I was about to tease, "Caught you," but hearing his last words, I froze at the threshold. "No, I can't promise anything." "Yeah, I know. It's just that everything's messy right now." Dylan's voice softened. Then he was silent for a long moment before saying, "Goodbye." When he turned and saw me, he startled slightly, then covered with his familiar smile. "Aaron, you're here?" I tried to keep my voice normal. "I'm on time. So are you this time?" But in my chest was a wave of questions I hadn't dared voice. We sat at the old dining table turned study space. Dylan explained a tough concept, his voice steady, eyes focused. But I saw the new distance open up. Not spatial, just inches, but something unnameable. At the end, packing books, I asked, voice light as if afraid to wake something, "Who were you talking to?" Dylan paused, gripping his textbook tight. "An ex," he said. "We haven't fully cut ties." Those words fell between us like heavy snowflakes. Soft, cold, melting straight into the heart. I nodded, trying to stay composed. "I understand." Actually, I understood nothing except realizing I wasn't the only one. That night, I walked back to the dorm through snow-covered paths. Snow crunched underfoot, breaths turning to white mist. I recalled Dylan's joking line, "Life rarely has the end." Suddenly I thought maybe our story would have, just not right now. But I knew one thing clearer than ever. I'd gone too far to turn back without pain. I climbed the stairs, opened my door, the familiar yellow light welcoming me. I sat on the bed, set my phone aside. For the first time, I didn't wait for Dylan's message. I just sat there, hearing the soft hum of the heater, and told myself the truth. I was loving someone not ready to be loved. That was the wrong choice by every rational definition. But my heart, stubborn, tender, foolish, whispered. It was still the only choice I wanted. Spring arrived unannounced. Snow melted into puddles in the yard, trees sprouted tiny green buds, and students wore lighter jackets as if to urge the sun to stay longer. I changed too, not obviously, but in ways only I noticed. I was more cautious with my own hopes. Dylan and I still met. We were still us. But the name for that relationship was never set. Some days Dylan pulled me into small eateries off campus, laughing a lot, talking a lot, as if the world was just us. But other days he retreated, like a wave suddenly receding, leaving me on an empty beach. One Tuesday evening, we sat in the empty bleachers of the football stadium. Lights off, only distant building glows. Dylan tossed me a soda can, then lay back, hands behind his head. "Aaron," he said, not looking at me, "do you ever feel like you're living two lives at once?" I chuckled lightly. "One for family, one for yourself? Welcome to the club." Dylan tilted his head toward me, eyes flashing gratitude like I'd untied an invisible knot in him. We talked about the future, something distant yet hanging right overhead. I spoke of internship applications on the East Coast, cities I wanted to try living in. Dylan just shrugged. "I can't see that far yet. I'm just trying not to mess up today." It sounded simple, but beneath was a labyrinth. I sat there, understanding more. I loved someone always on the edge between staying and leaving. Then that choice came closer than we thought. One afternoon after lab, Dylan texted, "Need to see you. Usual spot." The usual spot was the wooden bench behind the library, where every season seemed to pass us by. When I arrived, Dylan sat there, hands clasped, hoodie pulled tight like hiding from the cool spring breeze. "I got accepted," Dylan said. "The exchange program for a semester across the ocean. I'll go pretty soon." I stood still, feeling the ground shift slightly underfoot. I knew I should congratulate him. I knew this was good for Dylan, for his future, for all the adult things. And I did the theoretically right thing. I smiled. "That's great. I'm happy for you." Dylan looked at me, his eyes pained enough to make my smile tremble. "Aaron, I don't know what to do with us." I took a deep breath. The word us rang between two guys trying to seem okay. "We never named it," I whispered. "So, maybe we don't need a perfect ending." Dylan shook his head. "I hate hurting you." I laughed, a sound clearly not joyful. "The funny thing is you don't have to try." I walked in myself. We sat for a long time without speaking. Wind blew through young trees, carrying scents of damp earth and new flowers. I suddenly realized, love isn't always about right or wrong. Sometimes it's just, do I dare be there, even knowing it might hurt? And I'd answered long ago. How long? I asked. A few weeks, Dylan replied. It happened faster than I thought. I nodded. My mind raced through scenes. The foggy windowed cafe, library corner table, old wooden bench. I wanted to pack them all up like a student boxing memories at year's end. From that day, we lived in the before. Before Dylan left. Before everything changed names. Each small date carried a strange light. Like we were rehearsing remembering each other. Dylan became gentler, more fully present, and that, ironically, made me love him more. One evening near the end, we strolled around the small lake at campus's edge. Water reflected stretched lights into shimmering streaks. Dylan stopped, turned to me. Aaron, he said, voice cracking a bit. If in the new place, I realize I still want to come back to you. Would you? I cut in with a sad smile. Don't promise. You said you're not good at it. He went silent, then nodded faintly. We hugged. Not dramatic. No soundtrack. Just soft water lapping shore and my heart pounding under my jacket. The night before Dylan left, we sat in my room, lights off. Parking lot glow slipped through curtains into long streaks on walls. No one said goodbye. Too heavy, too formal. Like stamping an end on our unfinished story. Dylan held my hand tight, enough that I thought I'd remember its shape forever. You're the wrong choice, you know? I whispered, half joking, half serious. Dylan chuckled softly. I know. And you? You're the rightest thing a wrong choice like me ever had. I didn't know what to say except rest my forehead on his. Eyes closed. No vows, no precise future plans. Just the raw, simple, fierce truth. I loved Dylan. And love sometimes isn't holding on, but accepting the other has their own path, even if it doesn't run parallel to yours. The next morning, I didn't go to the airport. Dylan didn't ask, and I wasn't sure I could handle it. We texted short lines. Take care. You too. That was it. A sliding door closed miles away, while I stood in sun-drenched campus, feeling like I'd lost something never officially given. But one thing I knew clearer than the sun on grass and birds and trees. Our story didn't need outsiders judging right or wrong. It existed, it lived, it made my heart tremble, and that was enough to make it real. I walked across the quad, spring wind scattering young leaves on grass. In my head, a line echoed. Not for anyone to hear, just to remind myself. He was the wrong choice, but the only one I dared love with all I had. The time after wasn't as noisy as I imagined. No thunder striking midlife, no cinematic rain. Just ordinary days. Classes, emails, rushed lunches, with a Dylan-shaped void slipping between everything I did. Some mornings I'd absent-mindedly check my phone, waiting for a notification. Then I'd smile at myself for the habit, set it down, try returning to the book before me. Occasionally Dylan messaged. Not often, not long, not as full as before. But each had his familiar voice. Tales of the new city, windy roads, how he still wasn't used to the strange bed. I replied slowly, not urgently, like learning to love more quietly. Friends said I should move on. I nodded, smiled, said easy things about everything will be fine. But walking back through the quad, seeing couples on grass, I knew I wasn't standing still. I was moving, just moving with the memory. One late evening after library shift, I returned to my room, opened my laptop for an essay. The blank screen waited for words. But my hands typed into another empty window, not to send, no recipient. I wrote for myself or for Dylan, or for the version of us that existed only in imagination. I wrote that I had no regrets. No regrets for loving someone not ready. No regrets for choosing what could hurt me. We weren't a perfect story, not a frameable photo, but we were real, with long nights, silences, tiny moments making the world enough. Some nights I'd walk to the wooden bench behind the library, where it all began and changed. The bench was still there, bending slightly under students' stories through seasons. I'd sit, watching lights scatter golden streaks on dewy grass. And there, in a vast yet intimate campus, I understood something simple. Love isn't always finding the right person. Sometimes it's just daring to love the one who touched you right at the right time. One day, Dylan video called. He was in his new dorm, white walls, window opening to an unfamiliar sky. His hair a bit longer, smile still the one that pulled me from my grayest days. "Aaron," he said, "I just wanted to show you this place and say I'm okay." We chatted randomly. Classes, cafeteria food, weird weather. But under all the small talk was an unspoken current. "I miss you." When the call ended, Dylan hesitated. "Listen." He paused, then sighed softly. "I still don't know where or who I belong to. But what was between us, to me, wasn't a mistake." I looked at the slightly shaky screen from the connection, suddenly feeling my eyes sting. "I know," I replied. "And even if it doesn't go further, it was real." We smiled. Then the screen faded. At semester's end, I stood amid the school's spring festival. Booths full of laughter, smells of grilled food on charcoal, balloons bobbing tied to students' wrists. Music blared from the outdoor stage, lively and youthful. I realized I was smiling too, not because I'd forgotten Dylan, but because I was learning to carry him in my heart and still move forward. I don't sugarcoat our story. It had sharp edges, long nights, moments making me want to curl up. But it taught me to open doors to the world, to myself, that I deserved love, even if the one I loved didn't know how to stay. Sometimes I think about a day we might meet again in a completely different city, at a random cafe or on a crowded train. Maybe we just smile, exchange pleasantries, then each turn to our own paths. Or maybe one of us would linger a bit longer. I don't script the future anymore. I just know what happened between us will always be part of me, unedited. Tonight, I sit by the window, watching distant city lights flicker. I write these final lines, not to end Dylan or us, but to place a gentle hand on my shoulder and say, "You loved, and that was never wrong." Dylan was the wrong choice by every safe standard, but the only one that woke my heart fully like that. If life asked if I'd choose again, I'm not sure I'd answer right away. But I know one thing, I don't want to go back to the version of me before him. I close the notebook, turn off the light. In the quiet dark, I hear my heartbeat thumping clearly. Not shattered, not fully healed, just continuing. And I smile, this time without sadness. Because sometimes growing up isn't learning to keep everyone, but learning not to lose yourself after loving them. This story has the end like Dylan once said. It just has me, moving on, carrying the fall, winter, spring that passed with a guy named Dylan. And if you ask what he was in my life, I'd say this. He was the wrong choice, but the only one for me.